What happens to the soul of someone who has been cremated? Sit with that question for a moment. Don't rush past it. Is there a spiritual risk in this practice that has become so common in our world today? Does cremation somehow touch the salvation of our loved ones? Their eternal rest? These are the questions we whisper. The questions we're almost afraid to ask out loud. And they become even heavier when we learn that a mystic as extraordinary as Padre Pio, a man who bore the wounds of Christ in his own body, spoke directly into this exact fear. I want you to stop scrolling, stop multitasking. Give me the next 30 minutes, because what you're about to hear may be the very answer you've been carrying as a silent burden for years. What if the way we treat the body after death is connected, spiritually connected to the journey of the soul? And what if everything you assumed about that connection is only half the story? Today, I'm going to walk you through what Padre Pio revealed about cremation, about the fate of the soul, and about a story so specific, so mystical, that it will change the way you think about death itself. This is not theological speculation. This touches the very core of who you are. Body, soul, and spirit held together in one dignity before God. If you've lost someone who was cremated too, if you're weighing this decision for yourself or for someone you love, this message was made for you. Before we go further, if you believe in the intercession of the saints, type, Lord, guide my understanding in the comments right now. Let that simple act open your heart to receive what's coming. Let's begin to understand what Padre Pio taught about cremation. We first have to understand how our faith sees the human body. This isn't a side note. This is the foundation everything else is built on. Our modern world has a habit of reducing the body to something utilitarian. A vessel, a machine, sometimes even a burden. But that is not the Christian vision. In Catholic teaching, the body is sacred. It is precious. It is not something you own like property. It is a gift entrusted to you by God Himself. The Apostle Paul writes it plainly. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you? That is not poetry. That is literal truth. Padre Pio understood this with a clarity most of us will never reach in this life. For him, the human body was never just biological matter marching toward decay. It was sacred ground. A place where heaven and earth actually meet. And as a man who carried the wounds of Christ in his own flesh for 50 years, he knew, not theoretically, but experientially, how the body participates in redemption itself. There's a moment worth sitting with. While counseling a grieving family, Padre Pio is remembered to have said something like this: never forget, our bodies are not discarded shells. They are marked by baptism, strengthened by confirmation, nourished by the Eucharist, and destined for resurrection. What God has honored, we must also honor. And there's a story passed down through those close to Him of how He treated a body even after death. When one of His own spiritual children passed away, He insisted on celebrating the funeral mass Himself. Those present said they had never seen anyone pray over a body with such tenderness. When someone asked him about it afterward, he is said to have answered simply, that body housed a soul that now stands before God. It was washed in baptism, fed with Christ, anointed with holy oil. How could I not show it reverence? That reverence wasn't sentiment. It was theology in motion. Because here is what Padre Pio never forgot, and what so many of us do forget. The body is not a temporary shell. It is essential to who you are. At the resurrection, we will not float as disembodied spirits. We will be complete persons again, body and soul reunited and glorified. The Catechism tells us that the Christian meaning of death is revealed in the light of the paschal mystery, the death and resurrection of Christ, in whom resides our only hope. That's why how we treat the body after death matters, because it reflects what we actually believe about the resurrection. Padre Pio once told a grieving mother something that I want you to hold on to. Your son's body is asleep, not destroyed. It awaits the trumpet call. What sleeps will awaken. What is sound will rise. Sleep, not ending. That image shaped everything about how he approached death and how he approached the treatment of the body after it. So, before we go one step further into the question of cremation, plant this truth in your heart. Your body matters to God. It has knelt in prayer. It has received the Eucharist. It has performed works of mercy in this world. And one day, according to everything we believe, it will rise again, transformed, but still unmistakably yours. Hold that lens firmly, because it's the only lens through which what comes next will make sense. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it in the comments, not just read past it. Have you ever felt guilt, even quiet, unspoken guilt, over a decision made about a loved one's remains? Type yes. If that's you, you are not alone in this room. And by the end of this video, I believe you'll feel the weight of that guilt begin to lift. For centuries, the Catholic Church prohibited cremation outright. This was never arbitrary. It came from a fierce defense of the body's dignity and an unwavering belief in the resurrection. But in 1963, the church revised that position. Cremation in itself was recognized as not inherently opposed to the Christian faith. That change, however, came with conditions Padre Pio took seriously. The Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 231 states it this way: the church permits cremation, provided that it does not demonstrate a denial of faith in the resurrection of the body. Read that again. It's not the physical act of cremation that is the problem. It's the intention and the belief behind it. Padre Pio, with his extraordinary spiritual insight, looked past the theological wording into the spiritual realities underneath it. Even after the church permitted cremation, he continued to urge caution. When asked directly about the change, he is remembered to have said something like, the church in her wisdom permits what is not intrinsically evil, but wisdom also means discerning what is most conducive to spiritual good. What troubled him was never cremation itself. What troubled him was what it so often symbolized in a modern world drifting from its foundations. A forgetting of the body's sacredness, a quiet erosion of belief in the resurrection. He noticed that many people were choosing cremation not out of necessity, but out of a diminished understanding of what the body actually means. To a physician he was directing spiritually, he is said to have offered this warning: don't confuse what is permitted with what is spiritually beneficial. The church permits many things that are not the highest expression of our faith. Permission and ideal are two different things. Hold that distinction. It matters. One striking line attributed to him, passed down by those close to him, came when he was asked plainly about cremation. He paused. Those who knew him said he often paused like this before something important and said, do not be hasty to scatter what God has carefully assembled. There is a divine craftsmanship in the human body. It speaks of its creator. It speaks of its destiny. And yet, this is important. Padre Pio never condemned those who chose cremation for legitimate reasons, public health requirements, financial hardship, cultural circumstance. He never wielded this teaching as a weapon. Instead, he called people to discernment. The church's current guidance Padre Pio would want us to take seriously includes this: cremated remains should be kept in a sacred place, a cemetery, a columbarium, never scattered, never kept casually at home. This isn't bureaucracy for its own sake. It reflects the belief that the body, even reduced to ash, still deserves reverence and proper ritual care. Picture a family under real financial strain. They choose cremation, but they still hold a full funeral mass with the body present, and afterward, they place the remains in a blessed cemetery. That family has honored both the practical reality in front of them and the spiritual truth beneath it. That is exactly the kind of discernment Padre Pio was pointing toward. He wasn't demanding rigid tradition for tradition's sake. He was calling us to reverence. Reverence that flows from what we actually believe about life after death. As he so often reminded people, what we do with the body after death should reflect what we believe about life after death. Now we arrive at the question underneath the question. The one so many of you came here to have answered. Does cremation harm the soul? Does it affect its journey after death? This touches our deepest fears and our deepest hopes for the people we've lost. And Padre Pio, through his extraordinary spiritual gifts, offered something here that can bring real peace to a troubled heart. First, and Padre Pio was unshakably clear on this, the power of God is never limited by what happens to a physical body after death. To his spiritual children, he would say, in essence, God, who created the universe from nothing, can certainly resurrect a body regardless of its condition. The soul's eternal destiny is not compromised by cremation. God's power reaches beyond the physical state of human remains. Whether buried whole, cremated, lost at sea, or destroyed by tragedy, none of it limits him. What concerned Padre Pio more deeply was never the physical process. It was the spiritual disposition behind the choice. He could perceive, with a sensitivity few of us will ever have, that intention matters enormously in the spiritual life. A family choosing cremation out of practical necessity while holding on to reverence and faith faces no spiritual obstacle whatsoever. But choosing cremation specifically as a rejection of the church's teaching on the resurrection, that is a different matter entirely. That creates spiritual discord, not because of the ash, but because of the rejection. There's a moment worth remembering. Counseling a woman whose husband had requested cremation, Padre Pio is said to have told her, the state of a person's soul at death is what determines their journey, not what happens to their body afterward. Focus your energy not on worrying about his remains, but on praying for his soul. Sit with that. That redirection from the ashes to the prayer is the entire heart of his teaching. So many people who have chosen cremation for a loved one carried out afterward. Guilt, a quiet fear that they've somehow harmed that person's soul. If that's you, right now, in this moment, I want you to hear this. Padre Pio, comforting a family tormented by that exact fear, is remembered to have said, your decision was made in love and necessity, not in rejection of faith. God sees this clearly. Now focus on what truly helps your loved one. your prayers, your masses offered, your acts of charity in their name. This is the critical turn in his whole teaching. What truly impacts the soul's journey is not the treatment of the body. It is the prayer and spiritual support offered by the living. He taught again and again that souls in purgatory benefit enormously from masses, prayers, and sacrifices offered on their behalf. Pray for the soul of your departed, he would counsel. One devoutly attended mass does more good than any elaborate arrangement for their remains. There's an account of a man in confession, tormented over having cremated his father before the church's more recent guidance was widely known. Padre Pio's answer to him was direct. Your father's soul is not hindered by this, but he does yearn for your prayers. Offer a novena of masses for him, and you will do more for his soul than all your worrying. Here is the practical weight of all this. If you have already cremated someone you love, do not live in guilt. Live in intercession. Support their soul through prayer, through mass intentions, through acts of mercy done in their name. And if you're facing this decision now, for yourself or for someone else, approach it with reverence. Make sure the remains are treated with dignity, in keeping with the church's guidance. Padre Pio's teaching always circled back to one center. God's mercy is greater than any human decision. He would often recall Christ's words to Saint Faustina Kowalska. The greater the sinner, the greater the right to my mercy. If that is true for sin itself, how much more does it cover a decision made in grief, in hardship, in confusion, not in rebellion against God? What ultimately shapes the soul's journey is the life that was lived, the faith that was held, the love that was given and received. Live in such a way that your soul is always ready to meet God. Padre Pio would say, and let your loved ones carry your journey forward with their prayers when that moment comes. That not the condition of the remains is what matters in eternity. Before we go into the story I promised you at the start, the one that will bring all of this together, I want you to do one thing. If someone you love has passed, type their name in the comments right now. Just their first name. Let this become a moment of prayer for them together as one body of believers watching this right now. Now, let me take you to a sacristy in San Giovanni Ranrotondo in the early 1960s. This account has been carefully preserved by those who witnessed it, and it offers both comfort and clarity on everything we've discussed so far. One afternoon, while Padre Pio was praying quietly in the sacristy, a woman approached him in visible distress. She had traveled a great distance. Driven by grief and a spiritual anxiety she could no longer carry alone. Weeks earlier, her husband had died suddenly. In a moment of confusion and overwhelming sorrow, she had chosen cremation without first consulting her parish priest. Since then, she had barely slept. She was convinced, utterly convinced, that she had harmed her husband's soul, that she had somehow blocked his path to heaven. She knelt before Padre Pio, tears streaming down her face, and asked the question that had been burning in her chest for weeks. Father, have I committed an unforgivable sin? Where is my husband's soul? Is he at peace? Or have I condemned him to suffering because of my decision? Those present described what happened next carefully. Padre Pio looked at her with extraordinary compassion. Then he went silent for what felt like an eternity. His eyes closed in what those who knew him recognized as deep prayer. the same posture they had seen him take before other mystical experiences. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. God sees the heart. You acted out of grief, not out of contempt for the faith. Your husband's soul is not lost, but he needs your prayers. The woman wept even harder, but those watching noticed something. The first flicker of relief breaking through despair. Then Padre Pio said something that would mark her for the rest of her life. Eyes still closed, his words came almost like a whisper carried from somewhere else. I have seen him. I saw his soul. He is in purgatory. He calls for you, not with reproach, but because he loves you, because he knows your prayers can open the door to paradise for him. Do not stop offering masses for him. Pray the rosary each night and do not fear, because your love will be the rope that pulls him from the purifying fire. The woman fell to her knees, sobbing into her hands, but witnesses said it was a different kind of weeping now, not anguish, hope. That very evening, she wrote in a journal her family has preserved as a spiritual treasure. Padre Pio has restored my peace. My husband is not lost. He is on his way, and I will be his bridge to heaven. From that day on, she had a mass offered for him every year on November 2nd. All Souls Day, she lit a candle before the Sacred Heart. She prayed the rosary quietly, night after night, knowing although her husband's body had been reduced to ash, his soul was alive, awaiting purification, carried forward by God's mercy and his wife's faithful intercession. There are three things I want you to take from this account. First, intention matters more than the decision itself. This woman acted from grief, not from a rejection of faith, and God saw that distinction clearly. Second, cremation did not determine her husband's destiny. He was in purgatory not because of the ashes, but because, like most souls, he needed purification before entering the fullness of God's presence. Third, and this is the heart of everything, the power of prayer for the dead is real, and it is active, and it reaches them. That is where our focus belongs. Not guilt over decisions already made, but active, faithful, ongoing intercession. If you're carrying a burden like the one that woman carried into that sacristy, hear this as if it were spoken directly to you. God's mercy transcends your decision. What matters now is not the past choice about the remains. What matters is what you do with your prayers starting today. So let's make this practical the way Padre Pio always did. He was never merely theoretical. He gave people something concrete to hold on to. If you have already cremated a loved one and you carried out, replace the anxiety with prayer. The most powerful thing you can do for them isn't worry. It's intercession. Arrange for masses to be offered for their soul. Padre Pio is remembered to have said, a single mass offered for a soul in purgatory has more value than all the gold in the world. Bow. Build a regular rhythm of prayer specifically for them. Padre Pio called the rosary the weapon, a small, humble prayer with enormous spiritual weight. Even 1 decade. Pray daily with sincere love makes a real difference in the spiritual life. Love multiplies the value of a prayer far beyond its length. If you are currently facing this decision for yourself or for someone you love, don't rush it. Consult a priest who can walk with you through both the practical and the spiritual dimensions. Where possible, hold the funeral mass with the body present, even if cremation follows afterward. And if cremation is chosen, make a concrete plan for the remains to rest somewhere sacred. a Catholic cemetery, a columbarium, a blessed place set aside for remembrance and prayer. This isn't about rule following. It's about giving the body the dignity it's owed, even in its final form, and witnessing with your actions to what you believe about the resurrection. Talk to your family now. While there's time for calm conversation, rather than leaving these decisions to people who are grieving. And above everything, Padre Pio would tell you this above all else. Prepare your soul, not just your arrangements. Prepare to meet God every day of your life. He would say, and the details of what happens after your death will fade in significance. Live in a state of grace. Go to confession regularly. Receive the Eucharist with devotion. Pray the rosary. Practice charity. These habits prepare you for eternity in a way no funeral arrangement ever could. One more practice worth adopting. Offer sacrifices and acts of charity specifically for souls in purgatory. Establish a mass intention. Give to a charitable cause in your loved one's name. Every act of mercy you offer becomes, in his words, a channel of grace for a suffering soul. And if guilt over a past decision still lingers in you, hear this, as Padre Pio's own counsel, God's mercy is not limited by our mistakes. Offer your regret as a prayer, then replace it with trust in God's understanding. That transformation from regret into trust bears real spiritual fruit. As we come to the end of this together, I want to speak straight to your heart. Whatever decision lies behind you, or whatever decision lies ahead of you, hold on to this one truth above all others. God's love and mercy are infinitely greater than any human decision made over physical remains. Padre Pio again and again pointed us away from the condition of the body and toward the condition of the soul before God. He called us to prepare through prayer, through the sacraments, through charity, and to carry our departed loved ones forward through faithful intercession. The woman in that sacristy teaches us something we all need to hear, even in our confusion, even in our regret. God sees our hearts and honors our love. Our departed don't need perfect decisions from us. They need our prayers, our masses, our rosaries prayed with devotion. If this message brought you peace tonight, type peace through prayer in the comments below. Someone else carrying the exact same hidden burden you walked in with needs to see that. And if you know someone wrestling with this, someone grieving, someone unsure, someone carrying silent guilt, send them this video. This isn't wisdom meant to be kept to yourself. It's meant to be a healing word for a troubled heart. Padre Pio once said, "In my greatest sufferings, it helps to think of the glory of heaven that awaits us. What is a lifetime of pain compared to an eternity of joy? Whether our bodies return to dust slowly in the earth or quickly through cremation, our souls are destined for God's presence. If we live in his love, may Padre Pio's intercession bring peace to your heart tonight, clarity to your mind, hope for your journey ahead. And may the souls of all the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Until next time, keep your heart fixed on eternity and keep your hands busy in prayer. God bless you.